Alright guys, I'm here back with a new video, and in this video, I guess we're talking about Survivor UK, where, we've known about this for a while, that Survivor UK was going to be coming back, yet we finally got the cast drop, so I guess we're doing a cast assessment here. Now, straight up, I do not know how much I'm going to be able to cover of Survivor UK. I'm not fully on board with doing all of the typical coverage I would normally do for Survivor season, just due to the fact that there's so much going on right now. Got Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, Challenge, and a bevy of other shows that I'm not even covering that I'm watching. Again, there's just so much stuff going on right now. However, again, I'm at least going to do a cast assessment here. I might just say screw it and still do all the typical content I normally do, but I will at least do a review, probably a player ranking. We'll see about mid-season power ranking. But still, we are talking about Survivor UK, which, again, is finally coming back. Again, obviously, there were 2 seasons, both really, really bad, in the early 2000s. But it's finally back over 20 years later here with the reboot. And we'll see how this goes. I will say, from looking at the cast, I don't know how to really feel about it. I do feel like a lot of these people don't really seem to know what they're doing. There doesn't seem to be a lot of fans on this cast. Well, there certainly are a few here and there. It feels like the majority of this cast are people that don't really know much about Survivor, which is obviously something that people have been clamoring for after Survivor US has now typically gotten a lot more super fan heavy. And obviously Australian Survivor has kind of found a decent mix of this to where a lot of people do like Australian Survivor. However, with Survivor UK here, I do very much worry, particularly due to the fact that the UK public has never really seemed that receptive to social strategy games, where even taking more recent history, you do have shows like The Circle, where people were very upset when people were playing strategically on that show. You had The Traders UK, where a lot of people were very upset at a certain player there for playing in a manipulative way. You also have Rise and Fall, a show that I haven't been able to talk about on the channel, but I will talk about my reality TV video. But a show I really enjoyed, but still another one that had this controversy over people that were actually playing the game. And I do very much worry that that's going to happen on Survivor UK here. I just don't know if the UK public is very receptive to social strategy games. Now, again, I do think there are definitely going to be people here that are going to play the game more aggressively, but I do think as a whole, I do very much expect a lot of the people on this cast to be a bit more old school in their way of looking at the game of Survivor. I do worry about this not being a very dynamic season of Survivor, but again, we'll have to see. Now, I should mention the fact that as of the time of this recording, all we really have are very short bios that essentially have their age, hometown, and occupation alongside their response to questions. So again, there's not really much to go off here. Definitely less information than I typically do these cast assessments with. But again, screw it. We're still going to be talking through the entire cast, talking about my opinions on these people along the way, and later end up declaring my winner pick for the season. So let's start off. We're going to go through them alphabetical order of first name. So let's start off with Ashley, a 34-year-old brand strategist who is actually one of the people that I feel pretty good about. Ashley is, again, a person that is kind of in the perfect age for Survivor. I feel like 34 is kind of around the prime of you playing Survivor. Technically, probably like a little bit younger, but still very solid age. Seems to be pretty athletic. She does talk about having some experience in boxing. She seems to be very intelligent. Again, she's a brand strategist and she's a business owner. She does detail her strategy in a pretty decent way, talking about how she's going to eventually make big moves, but she's going to get to know people first. She's going to try to steer the game subtly and try to avoid being placed in a leadership position. She talks about being proactive and determined. Talks about how she's going to bring not just strength, but strategy. And I feel like there's a lot of good signs here. A lot of this kind of does remind me of Kim Spradlin, where, I'm not saying Ashley is going to be Kim Spradlin because she's probably not, but I feel like there's a lot of good signs here. Again, a pretty solid background, someone that is athletic, someone that seems to know that this game does involve strategy, and overall seems to be one of the more prepared people on this cast. So overall, I do feel pretty good about Ashley. I'm moving her on as a potential winner pick. Next up, we got Christopher, a 36-year-old singer-songwriter. And Christopher is one of these people that had very long answers in his bio, but I still didn't really get the greatest sense of how he's going to play the game. game. When asked about his strategy, he talks about how he doesn't have a big master plan, but he's going to keep his eyes open. He needs to adapt. And again, those are good things to say. I do think the acknowledgement of you having to be flexible in the game and there's no purpose in having this big master plan from the very beginning, yeah, I do think is good, especially on a season that, again, I don't think the level of gameplay is going to be particularly high. I do think if you come in and play the game very hard from the beginning, I think you're more than likely going to be targeted. And I feel like Christopher seems like someone that could be pretty decently positioned in this game. He seems to be pretty athletic. He talks about being extremely competitive. He talks about having a good social game and talks about how he brings a sense of warmth and openness. Talks also having a mischievous side. And again, I feel like these are all really good things. I feel like Christopher definitely comes off very well to me from the beginning. So again, we're on to a pretty good start here where I'm also going to move him on as a potential winner pick here. Next up, moving on to Doug, a 32-year-old flood risk consultant. And we're finally getting to someone that I'm not as high on here. Now, Doug is someone that I think can do well in a Season of Survivor like this. Now, again, I think this is going to be a more basic game, one that, while it may have some flips here and there, I think will be a mostly loyalty-based season. And I think if Doug is able to find himself a majority alliance early on and keep that majority coming into the merge, I can see Doug making a pretty deep run where he wins the last few challenges and wins the game. Again, I think that is definitely in the realm of possibility. However, Doug's answers do very much worry me. First up, he talks about being a fan of the original Survivor UK, which that's already a massive worry. But it does seem like he's more so a fan for the survival aspects of the game. He does talk about how much he wanted to be deserted on an island and build a shelter. He says that his strategy in the game is to establish himself as an indispensable member of the tribe. Again, I think those are worries. And also he does mention his height is 6'4", and I feel like he's going to be a big guy here. He's going to be someone that does well in challenges, probably is going to be the leader of the tribe in challenges, but I just feel like he's going to be such a big target. For coming to the merge, again, if he doesn't have the numbers, I think he's pretty screwed. Now, he does mention that he does want to find a shield in the game, which again is more strategy than we get from most of these people in these bios. So at least there's that, but I just don't think he can do it. Again, this guy is 6'4", already talking about wanting to do well in challenges and work hard at camp. I just do not see this guy not taking the leadership role. So again, I'm still actually like pretty decently high on Doug. Like, I still think there's definitely a path to Doug doing very well in this game. I just feel like it's one that is pretty highly dependent on him coming to the merge with numbers. To outside that, I do feel like he's someone that is probably pretty screwed in the game otherwise. So someone that I do think, again, is going to be safe early on, but by the end of the game is going to be a pretty high variance player there. Next up, we move on to Hannah, a 30-year-old semi-professional footballer who is an interesting player here. I mean, obviously she does come off as an extremely physical player. Again, she is a football player. She talks a lot about having a positive energy and having good social skills. And she's aware that strategy and alliances are a major part of Survivor. She talks about needing people to trust her and be comfortable with her. Like, I feel like these are a lot of good things. I feel like Hannah's another one here that I am pretty high on. Also, the fact that she seems like a fan of the show. Now, she does mention that she just started watching the show during lockdown. They'll end up binge watching season after season. But again, I think that's a good sign. I don't think you need to be a long-term fan, especially on this cast where many people openly say they've never watched the show ever. Again, I feel pretty good about Hannah. I do think she seems to have a lot of potential here. Again, seems like a potentially well-rounded player. My big worry is that she does seem like one of the more physical women on this cast, to where I do feel like she's probably going to be an endgame threat. Still, someone I feel pretty decent about, and someone that I'm moving on as a potential winner pick. Next up, we're moving on to Jess, a 38-year-old fitting model, and now we're getting to some of the weaker people on this cast. Jess is someone that does not know what she's in for. I don't have any sense of her being someone that knows the game really at all. And to be honest, a lot of that comes from the fact that she barely answered her questions. Literally, her bio answers are almost as short as they possibly could be. When asked what qualities do you think you bring to the game, she literally just says fun, laughter, and positivity. When asked about her strategy, she just says, I've never had a game plan. I just said I'm going to be true to myself and follow my heart. And again, that's bad. It really shows a lack of awareness of her game. Not really outside that, again, I don't really get that much from her. Now, initially when I read her bio, I was thinking, oh, this is the first boot candidate, and then realized, oh, there's a lot of first boot candidates on this cast. So again, she might make it far then, as I do feel like she's probably one of the better people of the people that I think could be the first boot, as I feel like she's someone that could be an asset in challenges. So at least there's that. But again, like from what we got from the bio, which is very little at all, I do not feel good about her. Not someone I'm moving on as a winner pick. Next up, we're moving on to Lawrence, a 29-year-old entrepreneur / master student. And Lawrence is interesting here because like you look at his photo and it instantly comes off as like he's this like mastermind, that he's this guy that got cast because he's gonna be the smartest person on his tribe. And he does also have like really long answers in his bio. And again, in his bio, he does come off as a bit of a know-it-all. He does make references to like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Machiavelli. He talks about being fluent in Spanish and brings up a George Mallory quote. It's like, again, he does seem like a bit of an intellectual here, but it's weird because it completely goes against what it seems like his strategy is, where his strategy is to play the buffoon, which he says comes natural. But he also ends up saying that he thinks that he's going to be a good source of morale and bring buffoon. Like it seems like that is a major aspect of his strategy, is to be this like class clown. And again, I don't fully know if he's going to be that way. Again, like we don't have a video to really get a sense of his true personality. Now he does at least detail strategy, which is also kind of a questionable one. Talks about building strong relationships, but does also talk about how he wants to avoid being involved into politics and just play like Switzerland, which again is probably not ideal. While I get what he's going for and him not wanting to put a target on his back, and I assume his plan is to kind of play the middle from that, it also feels like he's like kind of adverse to alliances, and again that's a bit of a worry there. Like I think Lawrence is someone that I just get a lot of like mixed vibes from him, where while I feel like there's definitely a chance of him being a really solid player, I really just could not get a solid vibe from his bio here. Next up, we're moving on to Lee, a 28-year-old professional boxer, and Lee is another one of these that I think is a bit out of his depths coming into this. Again, he had very short answers to his bio, but he does talk about how his plan is just to be himself and perform well in challenges, and that he's coming in blind as he hasn't seen the show before, though at least does clarify that he's an idiot, so at least he knew that. But anyway, he does talk about how he has a good energy and positive mental attitude. He talks about wanting to show the public his true self. Like, it does very much come off to me as, again, he's going to be this nice guy, does well in challenges. I think he'll be largely affable. At that point, it just matters how active strategically he's going to be, because I think if he is active, he's probably going to be bad, and I could definitely see him ruining his game in that light. But if he is a pretty passive player, I definitely could see a world where, again, he makes it pretty far. I don't really see any reason why you would get rid of him early on, but I really don't have much faith in him to actually win the game unless he just wins out, as it doesn't really feel like he has the strategic ability to really do that much in the game. But for him, I think his longevity really just comes down to, is he going to mess it up for himself? And I don't really get the sense that he will, but I still feel like obviously there is a lot of wonkiness of his potential in the game just due to the fact that he just doesn't know the show. So again, I don't feel too good about him. Next up, moving on to Leilani, and Leilani is essentially just another Jess. She's a 45-year-old barista and also a cleaner at a yoga studio, which is kind of a random other occupation. But she also never watched the show, and she literally even says, I didn't realize there's a psychological aspect to the game. It's like, what do you mean? How do you not know anything about the show? Like, she literally didn't know about people getting eliminated. She literally says, like, I thought it was just about living on the beach and competing in challenges. And it's like, how'd you get here? I mean, she does say that she got here through a friend telling her that she should apply, but still, it's like, how do you not do any research at all to at least have a general sense of the show you're going on? It's insanity to me. Which again, like, this is for like numerous people on this cast. It's just so bizarre that there's people on this show that don't even know the show. Like, it's not hard to find. Just look it up. But again, I have no faith in Leilani. I think she's probably the person that I have the least amount of faith in this cast, as I feel like, again, Lee, despite not knowing the game, at least is someone that will probably be kept around just due to physical strength. Jess at least didn't gloat in the fact that she didn't know the game. So again, I think Leilani is probably the person I'm the lowest on of all the people here. Next, I'm moving on to Matthew, a 21-year-old, the youngest person on this cast, and someone that I don't fully know what to think of him. I do think he's someone that probably does have some potential, with him acknowledging the fact that people are going to underestimate him, but he wants to talk about using that to his advantage and play a good social game. Talks about needing to be adaptable. I feel like there's a lot of good stuff there. Obviously, the big worry is life experience. experience. Again, he is the youngest of the cast, so there's obviously a chance of him not being respected by the others due to the fact that he is so young. Also, just outside that, obviously just has less life experience, and who knows how he's going to interact with the others. Again, I think there is some question marks, though in a way he does very much remind me of, spoiler alert for Survivor Quebec, the winner of that season, to where I could definitely see him coming off as a very likable presence, one that plays a more subdued game, but is just very passionate about being there and brings this positive energy. And if he makes it to the very end, I could definitely see a world where he's rewarded with the win. I feel okay about him. Again, not enough to put him as a potential winner pick, particularly due to his young age, but someone that I think has a decent chance on this season. Next up, we're moving on to Nathan, a 35-year-old fitness instructor and operations manager. And Nathan is someone that seems primed to be the merge boot. I think alongside Doug, these seem like the two more physical people on this cast. I feel like they should be the bigger targets come into the merge phase of the game. And really, in most ways, I kind of look at him as very similar to Doug. He does talk about the same thing of his strategies to be an asset to his tribe and build strong relationships, but he doesn't want to be looked at as the strongest player, but also not the weakest. And again, I just think he's another one that, like, how is he going to be able to hide how much of a threat he is? Like, he is jacked and is a fitness instructor. Like, I think there's no way he's going to be able to keep the target off his back. Now, again, he is a decent age for the game here. He's 35. He does seem to have a decent amount of life experience. He seems like someone that does have a lot of depth to him, but I just feel like for a game like this, he just seems primed to be taken out around the merge, unless again he's in this position where he comes to the merge with numbers and they hold true. But even then, I think he'll need to win out at the end. Again, I do think there's a lot of worries there, but still someone that I'm not completely out on. But again, I'm not going to move him on as a winner pick. Next up, moving on to the oldest person of this cast, and that is Pegleg, a 54-year-old surf school owner who is obviously dubbed Pegleg because he only has one leg. And really, I just feel like all around, there's a lot of worries with Pegleg here. I mean, he's, again, oldest person on the cast. I think there's definitely going to be worries about, does he bond with the other people here? Also physically, I mean, as much as it sucks, I mean, like, obviously him not having a leg is going to be a hindrance in challenges. We literally saw this with Damien on Australian Survivor, to where he was an early boot despite how much people respected him. Like, I kind of worry about that trajectory for Pegleg as well. He also seems extremely serious. He does talk about how he has a Gen X attitude of just getting on with it and not whining and moaning. He talks about his training schedule and that he built challenges in his garden. Like, I think he's taking this very seriously, to where I do very much worry about Pegleg here. Again, I think it would be great to see someone like him make it very deep into the game, and I do think if he got to the end, I think he could very much win a jury vote. But I mean, I just feel like he's the type of person that will be booted early, even if it wasn't for the potential physical liability. I just feel like his personality is probably not one that's going to gel with the rest of his tribe. So again, just as a whole, don't feel particularly great about him. Next up, we're moving on to Rach, who is a 23-year-old personal trainer, which I should clarify, there are two Rachels on this cast, and this one's going by Rach. And Rach is kind of an interesting prospect on this cast here. While she is one that is a very recent Survivor fan, she at least is a fan. She talked about having binged Australian Survivor and getting really into that. The problem is that she seems to be really into it because of the challenges, and talks a lot about her physical strength, and that'll be her biggest asset in the game. Talks about her strategy is just to be herself. And again, like, I think there are worries there, particularly in the fact that she's only a fan of Australian Survivor, the fact that she seems to have gotten the takeaway from Australian Survivor that, oh, it's a show about physicality. And again, I think that is a worry. Now, as a whole, I do feel like Rach should be the type of person that should make it very deep in the game without any issues. Again, being a pretty physical younger woman, I don't see her having any issues getting deep into the game. And she kind of fits into like the Andrea archetype of someone that should make a deep run every time they play. The worry is obviously just strategically. I don't know if she has strategic chops in this game. I don't know if she really knows the strategic game at all. Again, I think that is definitely a worry, but I think just in terms of longevity, I would feel very good about her. But I do think the fact that none of her bio screams out anything remotely strategic is definitely the biggest red flag for me, to where I felt like I just could not really move her on as a potential winner pick. But then we move on to the other Rachel, who's obviously going by Rachel, a 40-year-old insurance claims handler. And Rachel's more in the ballpark of the Jesses and the Leilanis of the world, as someone that I don't get the sense that she knows what she's doing out here. Again, really short bio questions to everything outside of why you want to be on Survivor, which her response is pretty much entirely about inspiring her kids, along with talking about how she's she's a strong, outdoorsy, sporty person, which again makes it seem like she's very focused on challenges. When asked, do you have a strategy on how you're going to play the game? Her response is no. I'm going to be open, honest, and myself. And asked what she brings to the game, she says strength and being a team player, bringing honesty and encouragement. And again, I just don't get the sense that she knows what she's doing out here. Again, another one of these that seems to be here purely for the athleticism of the game, and another one that just seems to be here for the challenges. Doesn't seem to know the strategic game really at all based on anything we see here. Seems to be playing a very honest game. I think will be another one I don't really have much faith in. Another one I'm pretty low on as a whole. Next up, moving on to Ren, a 28-year-old network data scientist. And Ren very openly comes off as one of the biggest fans on this season. Talks about Survivor is her favorite show after finding it when she was 14, and saying that obsessed is an understatement. Talks about loving the mental and social aspects of the game. Talks about how it's not about playing the game you want to play, but more so about playing the game the jury wants you to play. Talks about building real relationships. Talks about blindsiding anyone in a heartbeat. Talks about her strategy of lying low until the merge and showing her game off in the later stages. Talks about tailoring her game to what the other players want to see in a winner. Again, there's a lot to like here. The problem is the fact that she's the only one that seems to be like this on this cast. Again, this is a cast that is not very fan heavy, and the fact that Ren is just so openly the biggest fan on this cast, I think is a bit of a worry for me. Again, I really like Ren. I hope she does well, and I hope that she can play the game that she's claiming that she will. As again, we've seen someone like Elisa Stanger end up playing the game that she's essentially describing, and it would be cool to see her play a game that is similar to that. I just worry again that she's a bit of an outlier on this cast. While I do think as a whole this season does kind of feel like it could end up playing out very similar to NZ Thailand, I feel like that's kind of the vibe I could possibly get from this season. I do kind of also worry that her game could play out kind of similarly to another NZ player, and that being D from NZ Nicaragua, who was the first boot of that season, being one of the only like true super fans on that cast. And again, I do worry for her potential in the game. I do feel like she's a very high variance player. I feel like if she does make it deep into the game, she definitely could have a very strong run in her, but I just feel like it is that variance that does make it a bit tough for me to actually put her as a potential winner pick. Next up, moving on to Richard, a 36-year-old pensions manager. And Richard's not one of these that has almost no bio. Again, he literally gave super short answers. When asked about why he's on Survivor, he just talks about wanting a new challenge, an opportunity to show himself physically and mentally, which again, the fact that he's aware that's a mental game, again, that's at least something. Plus, what qualities do you bring to the game? He says great communication, good team player, and empathy, which is such a nothing answer. But his answer to his strategy is actually a pretty decent one. Talks about being in the middle of the pack, but looking out for opportunities that he can use to his advantage. Again, I feel like that was at least an okay answer. Like as a whole, again, there's just so little to come off with Richard here to where I just think he's a big question mark. I don't really have high hopes from him, but I also don't feel like he's one of the people I expect to go super early either. He's just a really unknown quantity to me, largely just due to the fact that we just got nothing from his bio. But again, he is one of the few that actively says that it is a mental game. So at least that's something, which again, a very low bar for this cast, but it's something. So again, he's not the worst of the bunch, but not someone I'm super confident in either. Next up, moving on to Sabrina, a 45-year-old ultra marathon runner, charity founder, and author. And I feel pretty decent about Sabrina here, especially in terms of longevity. I do feel like while she is one of the older people on this cast, I feel like it isn't in a way that I expect her to be an early boots, where again, I feel like if we're looking at like early boots for some of the older women, I think the likes of Jess, Leilani, and Rachel are a lot more likely than Sabrina, who again is a athlete. She is a ultra marathon runner. She seems to have a lot of life experience. She talks a lot about having a lot of social skills, talks about wanting to bring out her maternal side. Now, I do worry specifically about a certain line from her in her bio about her strategy in the game, which is to dull her personality and to not assume a lead role or be bossy, which the fact that that's followed up from her saying that she's going to dull her personality makes me think that like, is that how she is? When she doesn't dull her personality, is that she's bossy? Which again, that could obviously be a red flag there. But as a whole, again, I think she is probably one of the more likely of the older women to make a very deep run in the game. I kind of can see this like Monica Culpepper style trajectory for her. Now, obviously with that, there's obviously the worry of like getting to the end and people looking at you as a motherly figure and being upset the fact that you voted them out. But I feel like Sabrina is someone that I think has longevity here, though I still worry about the win equity to actually win this season. But I think she's someone that I feel mostly okay about here. Next up, moving on to another one of the bigger fans on this cast, we have Shai? I'm gonna say Shai, a 33-year-old finance risk manager. And again, Shai is so open in his bio about being a super fan. Talks about having watched the show since he was 11, living in Sri Lanka, and having watched most previous seasons. Talks about thriving in challenges and being strategic. He talks about wanting to lay low at the beginning and not draw attention to himself, but later sees control mid-game. But he's open in the fact that that's going to be much easier said than done. I think there's a lot to like about Shai here. I think in comparison to someone like Ren, obviously the other massive super fan, I feel like Shai is someone that I definitely see making a deeper run a lot easier, to where, considering the fact that he is a physical asset seemingly to his tribe, I feel like there's going to be less worry about him getting voted out early on. And considering the fact that, again, he is a massive fan and seems to know what he's doing, he seems to know the game pretty well. I personally feel like there's a lot to like here about Shai, and that's why I'm personally moving on as a potential winner pick. And finally, the last person on this cast that we have to talk about is Tanuk. I think it's how you pronounce her name, a 30-year-old professional roller skater and adventurer who is also seemingly a pretty big fan of the show. Claims that she's watched every season of the show and has watched it since she was a kid. She talks about the loss of her parents and the fact that she wants to change her life now, and this being the first stepping stone to getting her there. It does seem like she has a lot of life experience. She seems like someone that is going to be a lot of fun. She talks about how she's a disco dynamite London babe, and she brightens up a group with vibes, singing, twerking, cartwheels, and laughter, but can also bring a calmer side. Talks about being a good mediator in arguments and has a positive mindset. I feel like there's a lot to like here from Tanuk. Now, I think my big worries are the fact that, I guess, she does talk a lot about her spiritualism, to where I kind of worry that she can come off a bit kooky to her tribe, to where they might not respect her because of that. I worry of like the Nick factor from BB Can 2, to where she became kind of an outcast due to how much she talked about her spirituality. I also do worry about her strategy and the fact that she mentions that she wants to find a ride or die and take them to the end, which again is all nice and good if you beat the person that is your ride or die, but it does scream out to me that she's going to be extremely loyal to the person that she makes her ride or die, which again I think can be a hindrance as well. And I think there is a lot to like from Tanuk. I do love that she is a big fan of the show and that she really seems to want to be out there, but I just feel like it is those like little red flags for me that do keep her out, potential being winner pick. But there we go. I mean, that is the entire cast of Survivor UK. Now let's get around to picking my winner pick here. So the people that I did move on are Ashley, Christopher, Hannah, and Shai. Again, all of which I think come off as very well-rounded players. I think they all come off as people that I could definitely see having a lot of longevity, along with also some decent game ability by the end. They all specifically talked about the game in a more intellectual way, giving super surface level answers. The first person I'm going to cut here is going to be Christopher. I do feel like Christopher, well, again, a lot of his answers were very solid, and he does seem like someone that could be a social butterfly, while also, again, seemingly physical. Seems to have a lot of good traits there. I do feel like his bio just came off the least impressive of the three in my mind, and I don't really have a good sense of his overall like game knowledge, to where I didn't pick him. The next person I'm going to drop is Hannah, who I also feel like is a very likely potential winner, and seemingly, again, well-rounded in the game. Again, a recent convert to the show, but someone that at least, again, is a fan of the show. However, someone that I think is a bit more overtly physical. The fact that she is a semi-professional footballer, and while, again, we've had someone like a Casey on Big Brother navigate beyond that target, I still feel like it is still a target towards the end of the game. And just straight up, I mean, the end game of Survivor is very different to the end game of Big Brother, which I think the end game of Big Brother would favor someone like Hannah a lot more. While on Survivor, I feel like in the end game, once she loses the challenge, she's probably out of there. So again, didn't pick her. But with that, it comes down to my top two, which we do have Ashley and Shai. So we do have Ashley and Shai. And the person I am going to go with here as my winner pick for Survivor UK is Shai. And I mean, honestly, it just comes down to the fact that he is a super fan. He is a big fan of the show, and also just seems like a well-rounded player beyond that. I feel like he seems like someone that will do very well in challenges, seems like someone that could do very well socially, and someone that knows the game strategically, which, again, many people on this cast don't know. Again, he doesn't seem to be very overt in his strategic nature. He talks about wanting to lie back and make moves towards the end game, and I feel like that's something that I could definitely see someone like him execute, and at least be there at that point in the game to be able to execute that plan. Now, again, it's not a demerit towards Ashley, who I think is also someone that I feel pretty good about, but I just feel like her overall game knowledge is a little bit more up in the air, even though, again, I could definitely see a very well-rounded player in her as well. But again, I just think with Shai, I just feel like the fact that he is a fan and seems to have more awareness of what he's actually doing is enough for me to pick him as my winner pick here. But there we go. I mean, that is my cast assessment for Survivor UK. Now, again, don't know if I'm doing a mid-season power ranking for this. Really, the timing of it would have to be right for it to happen, but obviously we are nearing the end of the Big Brother season, where that's more of a priority for me than a mid-season power ranking for Survivor UK. But again, maybe I'll still make one at some point. I will definitely be doing a review and a player ranking. I just don't know if they'll come out in a timely manner. Again, depending on when this season ends. Again, we also have Survivor, Amazing Race, a lot of other stuff. So again, like the actual timing of the videos beyond this, I'm not 100% sure when they're going to come out, but they will come out eventually, probably, hopefully. So again, stay tuned for all those things, along with all this coverage of these other shows and whatever other videos I've made. So stay tuned for all that. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.